Okay. I am fairly certain that I am hearable. However, if there is anybody other than myself in the stream, I would appreciate the confirmation. Um, okay. So, Rocket League through the lens of my philosophy for progression. So, as far as I know, this is the best method of, I mean, you could say winning games. However, I think it's most likely more helpful to think of winning games as a side effect of the method. So this is the best method as far as I can think of for playing Rocket League better. If your goal is to play the game, play ranked specifically, not just play ranked better, but this is my best method for progression, and my general philosophy for progression and a lot of other things matches pretty closely to this, but it's just specified for Rocket League. So I want to preface first the many goals of players in Rocket League, and the reason that this is important is because, well, let me just specify the many goals first. So there's the most common goal of any player in Rocket League, and it's to win your match. If you're playing in a competitive ranked match, the most common goal is to score more goals than the opponent. Okay, now again, this philosophy grows upon itself, so bear with me as I just kind of fumble through. But I do believe that it will be very, 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 very helpful, if at all possible that anybody listens. As a matter of fact, this stream, which I'm going to turn into a video. It will be the first long form video that I've ever posted. In any case, it's mostly for me in large part. However, I do believe that it could be helpful for other people, and the more people that pay attention, if any, would be helpful in return to me, and it would be exponential gain for each other. So the many goals of Rocket League players, I say the many goals because the most obvious one is that you want to win the match that you're in. That's the goal of the match, score more goals than the opponent. Another goal, less common in a Rocket League match, could be, and it's important to keep these things in for a lesson in this philosophy that I will be talking about later on. So trust that it is important to think about the goals of different goals of players. Perhaps let's say another goal would be that there's a guy in a particular lobby that isn't supposed to be there because he's smurfing, and his goal could be not to win that match. His goal could be to lose that match. His goal could be to only hit clips for a YouTube video, in which case he doesn't care whether or not he wins or whether or not he plays in a way conducive to progression. So with that said, there's many strategies for the most common goal, the goal that is the topic of this video, although it is important to keep the other goals in mind. Not wildly important, but important enough. There are many different strategies, general philosophies, specified philosophies, techniques to winning a match. But this isn't just about winning a match. This is also about progression itself, which has far less to do with the winning of a match than it does with the mind, mechanics, and actually playing in live game, although it is the nexus point of, it is the deciding factor of you ranking up, and thus there's a lot of emphasis put on it. It is the product of a chugging machine that is your practice, we'll say. And again, I'm just kind of rambling, but I do have a structure for this and some key points written down because I find it more fun to do this than write out a monologue. And even if I did write out a monologue, I don't think I'd have the wherewithal to memorize it and make it sound pretty. So anyways, what did we just say? We said currently, so there are many goals, and the main one is winning matches and getting better at Rocket League. And so there are many strategies now that we're talking about. One such strategy is a highly defensive player. Perhaps your philosophy is that if I play highly defensive, we will eventually get an opportunity to score on their net due to a mistake. And this is a pretty useful and viable strategy. There is, for example, another strategy, which could be to be wildly aggressive. The best defense is a good offense, many people have said. If I can score on the opponents more than they score on me via being as close to the ball as possible or just hitting it as hard as I can, at the end of the 5-minute timer, no matter what, at least I can say I pushed as hard as I could. Not metaphorically, in this case, literally pushed as hard as they could. And so this is a strategy that, again, wouldn't have a saying if it didn't bear some inkling of value and truth. And so those are two examples of strategies to win a match. However, they're not conducive to winning consistently. And the best strategy I have found, as somebody who's had a lot of hours in this game, and I haven't had as many hours as I'd like, so this is I haven't actually tried this hypothesis out. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm assuming right now that this is the best strategy, and we'll be trying it and most likely making videos about that strategy and how it goes in future videos. So that best strategy, you've heard this before, and again, you wouldn't have heard it if it didn't have some inkling of truth. However, I do believe that this strategy is by far the most whole, and that would be the adaptive strategy. For example, you have a player with a rough understanding, let's say a champ player like myself, a rough understanding or a rough understanding of what to expect when going into a ranked game. Their first goal, and the first goal of anybody who should be, and I do want to preface before going into this that this, again, video is not about winning games. It is about progressing in Rocket League, and sometimes progressing indeed does involve losing. It's a lot of troubleshooting, but the most efficient way to do it is with confidence, which I will talk about later. And not lying to yourself, but when you do decide to do something based off of the most that you can get out of it for whatever time you have available, you should act with confidence and not in fear to attempt to try this strategy in any given game. And so this player comes into a game with a preconceived notion of what his teammates should be able to do and what the enemies should be able to do as well. And so this adaptive strategy within the game, and I will put these, this is not in any particular order, by the way. These are a bunch of ideas, which I'll put in an order later in the video, but for now, I'm just kind of freeballing the description of them, but they will come to a a process eventually. So he gets in the game, and this is an example of the adaptive strategy. And he realizes that his teammate is, and these little tiny realizations in game should be instantaneous, momentary, and fast. And they should be confident based off of previous gameplay and based off of possibly some other things that I may get into. But he realizes that his teammate's not touching the ball quite as accurately as he would expect somebody in his rank or himself to do. Like, for instance, like this touch, okay? It doesn't have boost, whatever. It's not exactly the best touch. So this adaptive strategy instantaneously allows him, instead of focusing on a singular strategy, which locks a person down in any given game and may work 70% of the time, may work 20% of the time. However, I believe the adaptive strategy to work as much as you're willing to give it. This is a strategy that does not have a cap, whereas I think the other strategies have limitations entirely. And so you realize that your teammate is making touches that are not as conducive to somebody in your rank that you would assume. And so you might, with the adaptive strategy, decide to not really make a physical change or a mechanical change in game, a positional change, none of those things. You might first make a change in your way of thinking, which is that your teammate is missing more than he should, and then you then to shift more of your attention, believe it or not, towards your teammate. The reason being that if your teammate is missing just a little bit more than normal, and you're the only one who consciously makes note of it, it may be that subconsciously the other team for some reason feels better when they challenge your teammate, but it's not made consciously, instantaneously, and quickly because of practice. You are then able to allocate more of your attention to this teammate, and the reason being, for example, could be so that you are prepared more for his losses and prepared more for the opportunity of the confusion of the other teammates because of those losses. That they may be, the enemy team may simultaneously understand this as well as you do, and make a conscious shift toward attacking more attentively when he has the ball. In which case, and in any case, your attention should be shifted towards your teammate more than it was at the beginning of the game. And this is something that is, I'm drawing it out in words. I'm saying it in a lot of different ways and using actual real game examples, but in game, this practice is much easier than this drawn out explanation of it. And so that's an example of the adaptive strategy. So that's some in-game advice for progression. It's a way of thinking that we can integrate immediately. It does not necessarily take practice. However, in doing so more often, you will get better at it. And we'll talk about some of the possible dangers of this philosophy at some point as well. Not exactly sure how long this video will be, but I do intend to explore this topic to its end. So we've given an in-game example of we've given a part of the philosophy, the part of the philosophy that includes the in-game. However, it's not the only part of the philosophy that you can integrate into your games instantaneously without any practice. Simply preparedness in this philosophy is of utmost significance. So the philosophy of adaptation in game does extend further than passive, not communicating with your teammates. So we'll talk about communication is what I'm trying to say. Sure. Let's say you notice your teammate is making these touches, and we'll use the same person, and we'll then switch to another example. I'll do 2 examples. So this is the same guy that's making the touches, and you've made the shift toward the attention shift towards your teammate just a little bit. Really, really, really watching when it looks like he's stable with a possession, when it looks like when it really looks like he's in a good position to defend, and when it looks like he's awkward, is now your main focus. You've done all that. Okay, good. And you actually perhaps you notice a difference in the gameplay, but you're still losing. This is something I've done in my games, and it works beautifully. Sometimes it doesn't work at all, but it is a better strategy than doing nothing at all. And that is to actually turn your mic on or chat. Not quick chat, although I do believe there's an odd culture around quick chats, which I think have little to do with progression, but maybe a small amount, sure. So you type in the chat, and I've said these exact words to many people, and for most types of people, it snaps them right out of whatever fog they're in, because the chances are that they are playing rank play, and they're playing rank play like I'm playing free play right now. They're playing rank play, and they may have the mechs of a champ 3, or they may be good, but they're not playing with intention because they're talking to their brother, or they're listening to a podcast, or they're just not in a good headspace to play a rank game. And to them, that may not really matter, but I've noticed often that what we'll do, and what I do, and so this might just be an ode to people who think a similar way, is I will get frustrated at my teammate, of course impairing my gameplay, but in getting frustrated at my teammate, I do not attempt to solve the problem. However, what I do is immediately perhaps say something negative. Some people do that. Or perhaps subconsciously not trust my teammate, when really full stop not trusting your teammate in any situation other than them being AFK or maliciously trolling your game is never a good strategy. It's what I like to call not confronting whatever you want to call it, negative emotion. And again, I'm fully airing this philosophy out because it's said in a lot of high and a lot of highly viewed YouTube channels that it is important to not get angry while playing the game. So this isn't something that I'm just making up off the top of my head for a video game, and something that you can just brush off as unimportant and unintelligible, because it is important and intelligible, and it's said a lot of times, but not. Don't get frustrated with your teammates is not a solution. It's a recognition of a common malpractice. Cool. Here's what you do. In not hiding your frustration, you simultaneously relieve your frustration, and in doing so in a way that is perfectly expressive of the frustration, blunt and not coddling, but not in pursuit of hurting your teammate. What you do is you make a call toward your teammate that is assertive and not kind but honest, and that is received almost every single time that I do it. Very, like, for some reason, even in a video game, very seriously. So the exact words I always say, and I actually say this even when my teammate attempts to forfeit at 3-0, 2-0, I will type in the chat, "Come on, man, we're not fucking doing this. Lock the fuck in." And in saying it in a stern way and not saying he's bad, he sucks, or I'm bad and I suck and I'm sorry, or you should be sorry, or I'm gonna fuck your mom. Sorry, I don't know if I should be saying that, but you know, what goes on in the depths of Rocket League. And in doing it in a stern way and also expressing your frustrations, they're almost always, I've always noticed a shift. Immediately their car's faster. Immediately they're watching the ball. Immediately they're playing more intentively and very focused in a way that is far more dangerous to the opponent than this passive playstyle. And the reason they're doing so is because they've realized that there's somebody else on the other side of a screen. So okay, I feel that I've explained that to its depths, and I don't need to bore you anymore with it. That oftentimes helps my game. And then the adaptability, the second example I would give is if somebody is angry at you. I forgot that I was going to do two examples because that's not the only example that happens. Person B is angry with you because it could be for a plethora of reasons, reasons that you couldn't possibly understand, and sometimes reasons that are very obvious. Maybe you're playing bad, or maybe they're projecting. Either way, it's 0-2, and your teammate goes, "You're fucking retarded," and very clearly need to never play this game again. And the best way to handle a situation like that is to not say sorry or to apologize for playing bad, and it is also not to simultaneously go back with a malice comment equal to theirs. However, what I've found is the best way to bring them back to the game, because the goal isn't to sit here and talk about the very odd social aspect of Rocket League as it is a team game. The goal is to get better at Rocket League, and it's an aspect of Rocket League. So again, this is important just simply because we're talking about the progression of Rocket League. What I found is most conducive to my teammate performing at a attentive level again is not for me to fire back or lay down. It's for me to say, "Hey," and this is something that I actually don't do this often because again, this is kind of a new philosophy for me. But what I would attempt to do, and what I will attempt to do more accurately, is to be threatening, but not, attack yet. If it's 30 seconds left in the game, so fucking be it. Fuck this guy. I'm fucking going in. I talk my shit in Rocket League. I'll be the first one to tell you. If somebody takes me to a certain point where I realize they're throwing my game, if I'm playing to actually get better, I fucking lose it. If I'm playing just to relax, I make jokes out of it. It just depends on my attitude. But in this instance, let's pretend is important to you that you progress in the game of Rocket League. There's nothing wrong with that. Then just saying, "Hey man, I'm gonna tell you right now, I have bad games, but I'm trying to win this shit. So lock the fuck in, or I'm gonna lose it. Just for an example, it's a simple way to let them know that you're not there. You're not up there with them, but you very easily could be. You're not angry and screaming and being malicious because you feel you've already lost or feel some sort of projection to your teammate because of your own inadequacy. In which case you've decided, instead of facing the simple truth of many things in life, for instance, being bad at Rocket League in a certain game, that you do what you do. Rather, I'm letting you know I have the capability to freak out, but I choose not to. It's a recognition of his frustration. I know I'm playing shitty, but I'm not fucking losing this game. Lock the fuck in. You've all encompassed in that. Again, I've explained the reasoning for doing something like this, but what it boils down to is a one-liner. And so again, don't take these things as something difficult to implement. Just take them as I've explained them to their full length, and that's why they sound, at least to me, it may sound so taxing. It's not that taxing. What I'm telling you to do is assert yourself, but don't give up. Okay, there you go. You can do it in any way you want. That's an example of how I would do it. So communication, we've talked about two immediate ways of thinking that will indeed impact your gameplay. Yes, it will. I have gone through these experiences, and yes, it does impact my gameplay. Yes, it does impact their gameplay, and yes, it does change whether or not we win sometimes. A good amount of the time. A notable amount of the time. Yeah. I suppose outside of the game. You know what? I will now. That's what I'll do. I will now express the very first rule. I will call it a rule because this is one of the first constants of the philosophy that will never change. In maybe. Keep practice, and keep play. When you are playing a ranked match, you ought not be doing anything other than playing the game in the pursuit of progression the best you can with the tools that you have learned, but never focus in a game on making those tools better. The pursuit of making the tools better that you utilize in a game is specifically meant for and designed to be honed in practice outside of the game. There are some odd exceptions like 50s, which you cannot help but to learn and practice inside of a game. And the specific tools that you use in game, you will naturally understand a different side of them while using them in game. But do not attempt consciously, and this may not be true for everybody, but on average, to, for instance, try to hit that triple flip reset that you've done for the last hour in free play. Because you've heard that flip resets are viable. So why can't I hit one in game? It seems so odd that I can't hit one in game. This is the game. Keep practice, and keep play. Your full and entire attention needs to be on your teammate's car, the enemy's cars, the positioning of your own car, and the field and its only resource, boost. That's it. Because that's all your brain can handle efficiently. If you are one-tracked mind, if you are a one-tracked mind in a ranked game, and the thing that's on your mind is speed flipping to every ball, you are going to lose. And also, you're not going to be practicing speed flips very well either, because I mean, let's face it, you're going to get beat to 90% of the balls and feel like you're speed flipping wrong, or you're going to get frustrated and then stop doing it halfway through the game, and now your game's just all over the place and inconsistent. So keep play, and practice. This is, in my opinion, my favorite and possibly the most important part of the philosophy of progression, my philosophy of progression. I mean, you've seen me in free play here, just kind of utilizing it as a way to stimulate myself so that I can think more one-tracked. But if you're in a game and you really focus on where the ball's going to hit, which I'm even not doing fully now, just talking to you and really just thinking about my control of the ball and really thinking about the weight of the ball, that's something you can think about. And that's something you can think about, the fact that there's an enemy right there and that he's going to do this, that, and the other thing. But you're not saying those words. It's an instinctual thing. This game is more instinctual than it is. It's more subconscious. This game is more subconscious than conscious because it's just so fast. You use your consciousness to practice, but for the most part, you know, the conscious decisions that you make to do a flip reset in a certain situation are prefabricated by your practice. I know that if I do a flick when there's one guy last back and it's top left, that usually that's a really, really good play. You don't say all that in your head. You see there's a guy last back and you maybe say the words, I'm a flick here. Actually, pro players, you know, that's one of the most important things in professional play is communication, and it's done so efficiently and quick. And all of that is preloaded by your practice. So do not sabotage by trying to play your game, trying to play your ranked games through the lens of the new thing you just learned. If you watch a YouTube video that says how to rank up, and it says you need to rotate, let's say tip number 5 tips to rank up, and the tip that the YouTuber says is most important, rotate more wide, for example. This is just an example, and he tells you why, and he tells you the reason that it's just gonna put you in better situations. You're gonna be able to see the play more. And then all you're focused on the entire game is rotating wide, because instead of, you know, entirely focusing on the task at hand, you're fully one-track mind on rotating wide. You're missing the opportunities to break away from something that isn't always going to be the case. What I'm trying to get at is why I call it the, what did I say? The adaptive strategy, the adaptive strat is just that. One thing is not going to save your gameplay, and it doesn't mean that you cannot implement consciously rotating wide. All it means is that it's not something that should be on your mind the entire game. And if you notice yourself thinking just about rotating wide for more than 5 seconds, you've thought too long about it, extinguish it from your mind. The place to do that is my next topic, because you can't practice ideas in free play. Not always. Like rotating wide, like, okay, like, let me just make like a little play here. The ball's going here. I can I mean, maybe, right? Replay analysis. Replay analysis is the free play of the mind. Yes, indeed. It is the custom training packs of the mind. It is the custom maps of the mind. It is where you train your mental. Because you get to look back on a game and see just exactly where you were mentally, and the tips and tricks that you try to use, or the strategies that you use to beat somebody in a game. And you got to see how the enemy reacted, how your teammate reacted, and whether or not it was good. So you might see that, you one game subconsciously just naturally rotated more wide, and that game was more conducive to a win. And so you don't have to think about it as much in game. You've practiced through analyzation and memorization instead of doing it, I guess. It's not that you don't do it. It's not that you don't practice it in game, but it's just that it shouldn't be your priority, is what I'm trying to say. How we doing? I agree. So keep practice, and keep play. All right. Little recap. We talked about the philosophy of, we talked about the different strategies of players. Very aggressive, very defensive. We talked about the best strategy, which is attention. The best strategy is I would say, I need to say this. Paying more attention in your games will help you, but it is not a solution. It only helps you to implement mechanical tools and your rotational tools. Paying attention itself does nothing but give you the opportunity to see opportunity. Okay. So, paying attention alone is not going to push you to the peaks of your possibility. What it will, however, allow you to do is notice. This is where I was kind of lost mentally there for a bit. Like I said, I didn't write down a script. I wrote down some keynotes, and one of those things I was trying to remember was wildly important that I hadn't had the time to write down. And I'm gonna get there again. Wildly important. It's wildly important, which means I should remember it. What attention allows you to do. What attention allows you to do is notice patterns. Here is the practical way and an example of how this can be utilized to further change your gameplay in the direction of progression. In paying a lot of attention to your gameplay, You allow yourself to see the good and bad things that you do and the good and bad things that your teammates do in game, but more importantly, in replay analysis. We're talking about the best way I know how to progress, and that has replay analysis as one of the pillars. I would recommend prior to playing free play, prior to training packs, prior to hopping into a casual match if you're so inclined, which I don't necessarily think is good or bad for your ranked play. Some people say it's bad, some people say it's good. I think that it's just chaotic and neutral. Is replay analysis. A lot of YouTubers that I see talk about replay analysis. It is never to the extent that I wish they would. They most of the time just say to do so. Some of them say to watch from the point of view of your teammate because it's easier to see the things that you're doing wrong from the point of view of your teammate, because you'll see them become uncomfortable with the situation based off of your touch, your play, your positioning. Your eye, but that's the furthest they go usually, and I'm sure there's people out there that absolutely do go into the depth that is needed. But in any case, I will do so here not only for the good of expressing the full truth of this philosophy, but also for my own looking back on. I would recommend finding the last time in recent memory or in recent replays that you've lost 5 matches in a row. And then what I want you to do is I want you to find a pattern. Any negative pattern. If you're finding a lot of them, choose the one that you subjectively think is most impacting your game. Maybe choose the one that seemed to lead to more goals. And at the end of the day, if you don't know which one to choose, pick any. Pick any one of the negative patterns you see, any of them. And this is specifically about you and your car and your gameplay. And I will now give an example. Let's say you lose 5 games in a row and you notice the main problem is that you are overcommitting. It's so bizarre, but you find yourself watching your own car driving wildly close to the ball in a very fast boost eating way and just flipping. And you say, okay, I've seen that. I write that down. In this specific situation, I have a tendency almost always to overcommit. I don't always overcommit on every play, but it just seems like when the ball is over the top of their net, it just looks so juicy. And the only thing I see is that shiny, sexy, succulent Rocket League ball. Huge. I could build a wall around that ball. I'm a Rocket League player.
I no longer see cars. You know, I told my wife I've never seen a car in my life. Never seen one. No, I've only ever seen balls. And so in those situations over top of the net, you clearly go blind and always overcommit. So yeah. And then what I want you to do is come up with a solution. For instance, my solution would be to, in those situations, play a little bit further back. Okay, so you write that down. Now what I want you to do, and this is an example of how to implement replay analysis, is watch 5 games in the most recent of your replays that you have won in a row. For some of you, that might not even be in your replays. Maybe even the 5 losses might not be in your replays, in which case find the closest equivalent, 2, 3 games. If you watch more than 3 games of losses in a row, I can almost promise you that there was some pattern in there and that there was some maybe misfortune, but there's always a pattern. You can find a pattern in one singular game, and I'm giving you 5 as a general rule. 5 games that you've won. Now, I want you to find the most prominent pattern that allowed you to win that game. That pattern, more specifically with winning, doesn't have to be you. But if you can find one that's about you, that's probably directly more useful. Maybe the pattern was a negative thing about your teammates, and it just so happened that you got 4 games in a row where there was a guy on their team that just overcommitted or played so far back, and it was only in this one situation where you were dribbling the ball on your car, and for some reason that just scared that person, so they felt they ought not play close. Whatever. I want you to take that pattern. I want you to write that pattern down. One pattern from a series of games that you won, and it should be about yourself. Try your best to find a pattern that you did that seemed to lead to goals. And then I want you to take those patterns and I want you to find a way to implement them into your game. Whether it be use those patterns to implement whatever. Find good things, keep them, make them better. Find bad thing, fix it. If the bad thing, and this is something that I actually have never, or maybe once now that I'm thinking of it, but I can't remember who, I've never heard this said. Oftentimes in finding a negative pattern, in attempting to fix it, it causes another problem. So for example, you find out that you overcommit and now you're playing further back, but for some reason it doesn't seem to lead to any less goals scored on your guys' net. It doesn't seem to lead to you feeling like you have, at the very least, control over the ball anymore. You have like 5 more saves than you normally do, but there's just no goals. In attempting to solve a negative pattern, or solve a negative, what's that word? Tendency, you've created another one, which is perfect. That's what I said at the very beginning of this recording, that part of my philosophy, it is necessary to lose. You cannot use this philosophy of progression and win every single game, or you will not. Well, at that point, you're just, zen. So yeah, you have to lose to pay attention to it and to know what you're doing wrong. Okay, so there ought not be any shame in losing unless you are losing for this for unless you're losing, you know why, and simply don't care. In which case, that frustration you're feeling is that you may be feeling toward yourself may mean a lot of different things, but for the most part, yeah. So there's replay analysis, and that's not even, I would assume, not even close to all of the ways to utilize replay analysis to its benefit. There's so many different ways, so you overcompensate and you play too far back, and now you have to realize that it doesn't mean that replay analysis is garbage. It doesn't mean that you're garbage. It doesn't mean that your implementation was useless. What it means is that you move it just a little bit more forward in those situations. You're still losing, maybe a little bit more forward. Okay, maybe where I'm placed on the field when it comes to this overcommitting or undercommitting isn't the solution at all. Maybe it's not my positioning. Maybe it's that every time there's every single time that ball's over their net, I use boost to get somewhere, like a lot of boost, even though there's no one around me. I don't freaking know, dude. Like, I'm about to fart. Steamy. Oh my gosh, chain reaction. I mean, who can tell how far you could take a fart? No, but so who knows what it ends up really being, what ends up being truly the source pattern. It really was that combination of your positioning and the amount of boost that you used. And now you have a little bit more wiggle room for how far away you're positioned in those specific situations, because you realize now that when that ball is fully in the air and you know exactly what's going to happen to it, and nothing sporadic is going to happen to the ball because no one's close enough to touch it within the time that you can flip, which means that you can just flip there instead of using boost. So just flip in those situations. Okay, that's one example of using a replay analysis. All that stuff that I just said takes, what, if you watch 10 replays, that takes an hour and a half to really analyze the patterns. That's a lot of commitment. However, again, I say that this is, in my opinion, the most effective way or effective philosophy conducive to producing, what did I say? Words is what I say often. Too many of them. Conducive to progress. So again, that time is absolutely necessary. And I will most likely, if there were to ever be anybody to actually watch this video and take it seriously, which is just like me rambling about my philosophy of progression generally. If anyone were to ever take it seriously, one of the objections that I can most easily hear in my head is that I just don't have enough time for a philosophy like that. And to that I say, it depends on what your goal is, because if your goal is to progress, you can use this philosophy, but just simply not to its extremes. You can shift. This philosophy is built on adaptation. It would be a paradox if it wouldn't be a good philosophy about adaptations if you couldn't take the philosophy and shift it and move it, change its shape, change its density, and the way you use it. Just means that it takes more time, but it doesn't change the fact that it works, and it doesn't change the fact that the more time you put in, the better it works. And that doesn't mean you have to put the time in faster, just means that it takes longer. But I, for one, wildly, for some reason, enjoy this game. I've never really enjoyed a game quite like this one. I think it's because of the dynamic, infinite possibilities of its physics. There are set games that are, story mode games and stuff, which are fun, but this truly brings out creativity and instantaneous decision making that in, for instance, a story game, I'm not playing a story game for that. But I love this. It's the same reason I love playing music. It's that creativity. It's that side of me. So anyways, if you're like that, I mean, really the time isn't a factor. I don't necessarily, I've been wanting to make a video about my philosophies of progression in Rocket League for a very long time. Never mentally been in the space to do it, or never been able to, or whatever the reason may be, for a very long time. I have a lot of different things going on, but because I love the game so much, I don't care when I do it, as long as my other responsibilities that I care more about than this game are taken care of. Eventually I'll do it. And that's that kind of same, and that's why I said my general philosophy for progression through the lens of Rocket League, because a lot of this stuff, you'll notice that I speak a lot, that I have spoken a lot about things outside of Rocket League, because a lot of this stuff I apply to anything I'm trying to get better at, that I really just want to get better at. I use certain things to just relax, and I use this game like free play sometimes just to relax, but I also use this game to scratch that itch of, creativity, just like music. And I do genuinely enjoy to progress. So if you're of that ilk, the time shouldn't really be an aspect. But yeah, like replay analysis takes a lot of time, but it's done the right way, which I explained how to do. I gave you 2 examples. It can be very helpful. And I'm sure there's a lot of kinks in this philosophy that I haven't worked out, but okay. So I talked about a lot of shit, and I think that's a good point to recap and see if there's anything else that I want to discuss, and after recap, and go from there. So Rocket League, through my, the lens of my general philosophy of progression, I talked about the different desires of players and how to handle that both within your own mind and gameplay and thought process. And also I expressed how to deal with that in a social manner that's more directly toward the thing that's frustrating you. In all aspects, if it just so happens that it doesn't work, not everything can be controlled for. You have, in that way, so we've talked about the different desires of your teammates and also the desires of your enemies. Keep in mind of that. You know what? Son of a bitch. There it is. It's all coming back to me because I didn't write specifics down because I didn't have time, because I was at work when I wrote this. Your very first step in playing a ranked game is to, and I said pay attention because I knew what I wanted to say subconsciously. I knew what I wanted to say subconsciously, I swear to you. But what I really meant also by paying attention is the very first step that you can implement into your games immediately is gathering information. It sounds trivial. It's not freaking trivial. We all do it, but now you're doing it consciously and quickly too. This isn't something that you fester over. And I talked a lot about gathering information, but didn't make it super clear what it really was, what the name of it was. So like, for instance, you ever been in a game and you look and you see he has a GC tag, so you might respect him a little bit more? Okay. My recommendation would be to not respect him any more or less, just to keep, not gameplay wise, but to just be more attentive of his movements. and to predict his movements more thoroughly than his teammate for the time being, for example. That's something I actually do. I made it a rule. Every single time I see somebody with a GC tag, because I'm champ, I pay attention. Not every single time, and sometimes I just play rank play to play, but that's one of the things that I'm trying to change. And those first 60 seconds of that game, I'm paying attention to all three cars. And I'm paying attention to the way that the play is flowing and who's got the ball and who has more control. And if I notice one of the many weaknesses that I have preloaded into my subconscious, which is like, making really, really hard touches. Not necessarily a weakness if the enemy team doesn't capitalize on it, but if they notice you making really hard touches, it's a weakness. I immediately, because I'm paying attention, know that every single time, not every time, but every single time I can make a slight half a second adjustment further back when it seems like that person's getting the ball. Dude, it's coming again. Fucking, what did I eat today? Oh, I had freaking Pizza Hut. That's right. Pizza Hut shit. Oh my gosh, you never out Pizza the Hut. Oh, it smells sweet. Okay. Well, now that you know that, yeah, capitalize on those big touches. For example, I noticed that thing subconsciously, so I use that as an example, or consciously rather, and it's preloaded subconsciously for me to move a little bit further back for those big bangs, because now he can't follow it up, but guess where I'm at? On the freaking ball, and now I get to make a play. So maybe it's that you immediately notice that the other team is fucking locked and the guy is wildly mechanical, and there's one guy that's a smurf and the other guy's your rank. And so now you just have to focus all of your attention, 90% of your attention, away from your teammate and the enemy, and just him, specifically when it comes to any time he has the ability to challenge, save a ball, or shoot. And that includes challenging your teammate, challenging you, so it takes most of your attention. But however, I've noticed when playing Smurfs, I almost always win, because they're just aping. They're mechanically gifted, but they don't think they have to focus in this rank. So when you give them all of your focus and the pure absolute power of every piece of attention you have, it really catches them off guard, and it can change the flow of the game. These are the little things. And my very first example was your teammate making small mistakes. So, you have those different strategies of dealing with the teammates. You have those different strategies of dealing with the enemy. Maybe it's that you notice that one of the guys is playing really, 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 really bad. So when the guy that's playing all right goes, and it's just the guy that's been playing pretty bad all game is last back, you just attack his fucking car. I mean, you just take this ball and his car's center net, and all you do is just put it directly at his car. Like, you just freaking bang. Because you do not want to be going for a slow aerial. You don't want to be going for this little slow play so that the other guy who's been playing decent can get back. You want to attack the goal as quickly as possible. And with the other guy, when he has the ball or when he's on defense, you play a lot more reserved and waiting for that moment that he does just make a little opportunity for you. But the other guy, you just go full bore. That's something that I also do. So read the fucking room at the beginning of your game. Then remember, okay,
So now we're going to just talk about everything that I've said so far. Again, hopefully this time I've kind of said everything that I wanted to say. And I'm going to recap it now so that it's pretty and that you could, if anyone ever watches this, could just skip to this part and listen to it. So here we go. Rocket League through the lens of my philosophy for progression. Currently, I think this is the best hypothesis for getting better at Rocket League. My best hypothesis. In thinking about the many goals of other Rocket League players, understand them. And the very first step that you should be doing when in game is reading the room. I've given many examples and tools on how to do so. Attention is key. There are many strategies to winning a Rocket League game and many strategies to progression. However, I think adaption is the most conducive to progression. Practice when you're practicing and play when you're playing. And go back for any of these key points when I was talking about them sporadically and take the examples I used of them. 5 bad replays, 5 good replays. Find the pattern. One pattern, any pattern, hopefully the most prominent pattern. Implement it into your game. And also, it did jog one thing, so I'm going to keep it short, but in replays, if you notice that there's somebody on the enemy team that can do something mechanically that you cannot, you two are in the same rank, which means that should be your next mechanical goal. If you want mechanics, this isn't just progression is not just mental. So in terms of your warming up mechanically, let it be focused, attentive. You want to warm up mechanically for attentively. For honestly, I will not give you a set time because I think that far more of this game is understanding your mistakes and adaptation and attention. So I do suppose that was a lot of fun, at least for me, to get it all out. And if ever you see this video, and you watch it to this point, all I ask is that you write down your thoughts. And I will probably make shorter and more to the point scripted renditions of this. So please fire away with your critiques. And that was cool.